Venom has been around in the comics since the 1980s, first appearing in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue 252. While the character may not be as old as its nemesis Spider-Man, who's been around since the 60s in the comics, Venom's history goes way back in terms of how long the Clintar symbiotes have actually been around on Earth for, and just how long Venom itself has existed for in its own time before it came to Earth, after it was mysteriously shunned from its homeworld. In Web of Venom Venom, we actually get to see an original Agent Venom team that Nick Fury attempted to create and utilize in the Vietnam War. Did you know that Venom was actually inspired by a fan suggestion too? Randy Schueller originally suggested a new suit for Spider-Man, which ended up becoming the inspirational spark that led to Venom. Marvel actually paid Schueller $220 for the idea and even offered to have him join the ranks as a writer, but it didn't end up working out. Today we'll be taking a closer look at this character's comic book progression as we count down the top 10 superpowers you didn't know Venom had. There have been some pretty crazy ones since this character's comic book introduction. Be sure to stick around to the end of this video as well, where I will have some comments from a previous video coming your way. Alright, let's get counting. Number 10. Procreation. Venom and Eddie are, in a sense, the parents of Carnage, who was born while the two were in prison, sharing a room with Cletus Cassidy. The symbiote found itself giving birth while under duress, while Eddie's life was threatened by Cassidy, who had decided to shank Brock to death. Cassidy ended up being wounded, and Carnage bonded with Cletus through his bloodstream. While Venom isn't the only symbiote capable of procreating, it's still pretty impressive and bizarre when it comes to its ability to do so. While technically asexual, the way that Eddie Brock and Venom are painted as a couple who end up having another little one on the way is even more strange, while still somehow being oddly charming. The two have another little one together, giving birth to the symbiote Sleeper. In fact, Eddie even bonds with the Venom symbiote while it's giving birth to help give it strength, as the birth process can be quite taxing, risking his own life in the process. Eddie and Venom sitting in a tree. Number 9. Matter Generation. While some may think of Venom as some kind of alien Spider-Man ripoff, the abilities that it is able to mimic of Spider-Man's are not all the symbiote is capable of. Venom can actually produce organic webbing, but that's only for those who are, interested in webbing. In fact, the weapons it is capable of producing rely heavily on the host that it finds itself bonded with. For example, when bonded with Flash Thompson, who lost his legs while serving in the military, it created for him new legs. And while bonded to Matt Gargan, the symbiote generated a weaponized scorpion tail reminiscent of Matt Gargan's original tail that he had as Scorpion. This is also why Venom's look often changes slightly from host to host. It becomes whatever it and its host needs it to be, or just wants it to be. Number 8. Flight. After his run-in with Null, Venom gained a few extra superpowers. One of these was a power of flight. It became capable of producing a giant set of demon or bat-like wings. While the wings definitely make Venom look really cool, this power doesn't seem one that is super necessary for the symbiote, who can already wall crawl and web swing. In fact, it's surprising that Venom was not able to grow wings before this, considering the symbiote can shapeshift and has had some insight into the power of flight when it was bonded with Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel. But apparently, flying was just always something that was a no-go for it, until I guess it wasn't. Yay, demon wings. I mean, who doesn't want demon wings, so let's be honest. So that is pretty cool. Number 7. Can bond with anything. While the Venom film starring Tom Hardy may have left audiences thinking that symbiosis is a complex process, wherein the symbiote is very selective in terms of whether or not it can even establish a bond with the host, some of the comics would contradict this train of thought. Venom definitely appears to have preferences, usually preferring to bond with Eddie Brock above all others, but the process itself is apparently not quite as selective. According to one comic, you don't have to even be living or sentient to bond with Venom, let alone be specifically compatible. In Venom Volume 2, Issue 36, the symbiote bonded with a freaking car. Yeah, an old rusty car. Granted, he was also still bonded with Flash Thompson at the time, but that really only makes this ability even crazier. So you can bond with an object and with a person. It's just a lot of bonding. Number 6. Unlimited potential. Due to Venom's genetic memory, Venom can reproduce the powers of those it bonds with, even after it's no longer bonded with said host, and there appears to be no limit in regards to how many people the symbiote can bond with. As such, as time goes on and it acquires a variety of different hosts, it will become even more and more powerful and strong, inheriting different abilities from those supers that it bonds with. Thus far, Venom has already bonded with a variety of different heroes and villains throughout comic book history, in alternate universes as well as in the main continuity of Earth 616, including but not limited to Hulk, Wolverine, Thor, Drax, Groot, and Captain Marvel. It even bonded with the Human Torch, but of course it ran away quickly after Johnny went to test what the suit would be like with this flame on, and understandably so. It was probably pretty terrified. Poor Venom. I guess Johnny didn't know that its weakness was fire? I don't know. Number 5. Telepathic link. You would think the Venom would use that to actually tell the Human Torch, like, maybe don't turn your flame on. Anyways, looking even beyond the typical telepathic communication that you would expect the Venom symbiote to be capable of from watching it talk to its host without whispering a word, the symbiote also remains connected to its homeworld and race via telepathic connection. In fact, its telepathic link is strengthened by the amount of time it spends with a host. Don't believe me? Just look at its connection to Eddie Brock, probably the host that Venom has spent the most time bonded to. At one point, Brock was able to hear its telepathic scream from across the state of New York. Now, that is a strong link. Not as strong as its connection to Clintar, which is like forever away, but still pretty strong. Number 4. Camouflage. In the 1990s, Venom was given a type of power in addition to its more well-known shapeshifting abilities. It was given the power to not only change shape, but change color, and even sort of change state with the power of camouflage. At one point, Venom even used this ability to pursue Spider-Man underwater, becoming clear and blending into the background of the water, in essence actually seeming to become the water. This power surprised even Peter, as it also seemed to allow Venom to breathe underwater as well. In the Carnage Unleashed storyline, Venom used this camouflage ability again, transforming to blend itself in with a train after being struck by it. Oh, the 90s, where anything was possible. Number 3. Extrasensory perception. You know that phrase, "I have eyes in the back of my head"? A term often used by parents and teachers who want to intimidate you into thinking they can see you at all times. Well, when Venom says it, it means it. The symbiote, of course, does not have literal eyes on the back of its head. In fact, although its mask has weird eye-like shapes on it, it would appear as though the symbiote doesn't really truly have eyes at all. It appears to operate through heightened senses, which allow it to perceive the full 360 degrees of its surroundings, as though every surface of the suit were actually covered in eyes and ears. This allows it to protect its host by warning it to danger, similar to, but different than, Spider-Man's Spidey sense, which the suit never seemed to actually adapt. We see the effects of this ability in Venom issue 1 when Flash is bonded with the symbiote as Agent Venom. Agent Venom uses its tendrils and its sensory perception to hold aim and fire guns at a slew of people who are attacking from behind. Pretty impressive that, you know, it's just like, I know where they are. I got this. Number 2. Enter the web. The online kind. During Carnage Unleashed, not only did Venom reveal how convincing its camouflage abilities were, but it also revealed another weirdly unique ability, which it also shared with Carnage. The ability to travel into computers and, by extension, the internet. After Cletus Cassidy escapes Ravencroft to kill people through a video game based on his life, Venom is forced to work against him to try and stop its offspring, Carnage. This ends up in a high-speed chase that moves to the digital world when Carnage escapes through a computer and into the internet. How does one move, though, into the internet? Well, this was the 90s, so the answer, of course, was revealed in both symbiotes turning to goo and seemingly slipping into a computer in order to move through an online network, because that's the way the internet works. That's how it worked in the 90s, maybe. Everything's connected by cords or something. God, that would be a mess. Number 1. Humanoid form. When we think of Venom, we often think of it as a combo deal, a marriage of the symbiote and usually a humanoid, like Eddie Brock or Peter Parker or Flash Thompson, or, you know, any other of the many supers, villains, humans, and apparently occasionally inanimate objects that Venom has bonded with. In fact, it has been established in the comics that Venom actually needs a host to survive, often feeding off nutrients from its host, kinda like a parasite. Eddie Brock even eats a ton of chocolate to help keep his symbiotic friend well fed, in a way, through the phenylethylamine that the snacks actually causes one's brain to produce, which the symbiote feeds off of. However, this isn't always the case. While Venom is weaker without a host, the symbiote has now been shown to be able to survive on its own for a short period of time. It takes on its own humanoid form as the suit, but simply without anyone inside. However, this does tend to quickly wear down the symbiote's stamina, and it can only manage to survive alone for about 12 hours before it starts to risk its own well-being. Still a pretty cool power, but can't do it forever. Be too dangerous. Also, I'd miss Eddie Brock too much. It's one true love. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. What are some of your favorite Venom moments in the comics? What do you think is the best version of Venom in terms of its hosts? Do you prefer Eddie Brock or Flash Thompson, or do you like someone else? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to the comments from one of my latest videos, top 10 alternate versions of the Flash that are faster than Barry Allen. Dr. Leek says, imagine being the living embodiment of the Speed Force. That would be a rush. There is actually an alternate that sort of is that. Sela Allen is actually a descendant of Barry who became one with the Speed Force after being taken to the Speed Force to be healed by her father because she was paralyzed at the time. It didn't work, but later on she reappeared as the physical form of the Speed Force, becoming merged with it. I almost put that on my list, but we haven't seen enough of her, so you know. Bring her out, DC, we want to check her out. Jenico X asks, please say Nightwing for life. Alright, let's take a page out of Honest Trailer's comments. Nightwing for life. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Be sure to comment below in this video for a chance to get shouted out in a future one. And while you're on your way down there, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring our bell if you haven't already. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you to stay nerdy, YouTube.